A few weeks ago, there was a system update 2019.28.3 that allowed game controller support on Beach Buggy Racing 2, a very good game available in the Tesla arcade lineup. In this video, I will be comparing 4 game controllers that work with the Model 3. The first is the Sony DualShock 4, which costs roughly $44. This is a wireless controller, but in order to use it with the Model 3, we need to use a micro USB cable connected to the front USB ports in order for this controller to work. Next is the liklihood PS4 compatible wired controller, which costs roughly $19. It has the same button arrangement as the previous PlayStation 4 controller. The only difference is that it has a permanently attached wire. Next is the EasySMX EMS 9103, a wireless Xbox style controller. It uses removable AA batteries. It costs roughly $30. And lastly, the EasySMX EMS 9100 wired version of the previous controller. It costs roughly $19. The first tip is to center the steering wheel before you start any games or use the controllers. I accidentally had it tilted and it caused errors in the controller. The first controller I'm testing is the liklihood PS4 controller. The buttons and joysticks are the same as on a standard DualShock 4 controller. This is the Amazon page for this controller. I've seen it anywhere from $18 to $20. You attach the wired USB cable to the car's front USB port. In this case, I'm attaching it to the Y splitter that I use with my wireless phone charger. Beach Buggy Racing 2 is the first game we're going to try. And we're not off to a good start. The controller is unresponsive to any direction changes or any button presses using the joypad or the controller buttons. Just to make sure, I unplug it from the Y adapter and plug it straight into the USB port. And I start up the game again. And no luck. Still not working. Let's try out some of the other games, starting out with Asteroids. The controller seems to work fine, though my gameplay isn't that great. Next we try Lunar Lander. The controls seem to be working fine. The joystick directions and the buttons are working. Next up is Missile Command. Joystick is working, and the buttons are working. Onward to Centipede. Joystick is working. Button is working. Next up is breakout. Using the joystick on this is kind of difficult because it only seems to do left and right motions, not very smooth. I mean, it works, but not very well. Starting up Millipede, and just like Centipede, the joystick and button works. No problems. Now we're playing with Tempest. Joystick seems to be moving the ship correctly around the game board. And the button seems to be working. And lastly, we have Gravitar. The joystick seems to work fine, and the button seems to work. Now to sum up this controller. It seems to work very well with most of the games, except it doesn't work with Beach Buggy Racing 2. That's the biggest problem with this controller. Next, we're going to be looking at the Sony DualShock 4 controller. I happen to own a PlayStation 4 and wondered how one of the controllers would work with the car. After a failed attempt, I figured out why. I tried using an original Sony DualShock 4 controller which came out in 2013. The original version will not work with the Tesla Model 3. I also happen to have a DualShock 4 version 2 in the house. This is the model CUH-ZCT2, which arrived around September 2016. You can tell this version because it has a light bar that shows through the top slot of the touchpad. This is the one that does work, and I'll show you how to do it. The first thing we need to do is to reset the controller. Find the small hole on the back of the controller, and then use a pin, or in my case an unfolded paper clip. Push in this button for a few seconds. Now you can connect it to the car with the micro USB cable. And then that cable gets plugged into the front USB port. You must not use any Y adapters. It only works straight into the left or right USB jack. It's a good idea to insert or remove controllers when you are not in the game. Quit out to the Tesla main menu and then go back into the games. Then the controllers work fine. Alright, so let's test Beach Buggy Racing. Okay, let's try one player. Continue. The X button activates the A on the screen. The O button does the B on the screen. The triangle button does the Y on the screen. The white trigger is accelerate, left trigger is brake, and the left joystick is steering left and right. As you can see, the chill difficulty is pretty easy. Difficulty ramps up a lot when you get to ludicrous. X does the A button. triangle does the Y. All the different maps have shortcuts that lead to alternate areas on the map. Some of them are actually quite hard to find, so you probably have to practice a bit to find them all. Alright, so this is what we got. So this works pretty well. It's a good controller. Let's try it in some other games. So we know Beach Buggy 2 works with this controller. Chess, no controllers work with. 2048, no controllers work with. Asteroids does work. Lunar Lander works a little bit, but not all the way. Missile Command works. Centipede works. Breakout works, but it's hard to do with the controller. Millipede works. Tempest and Gravitar. So let's try the next item here. So we're going to take this out. Next thing we're going to do is a generic game controller. This is an EasySMX Gamer's Choice. So it is an Xbox style controller. It has a wireless adapter, so this plugs in. And then on the back, there's a battery pack. So it takes AA size batteries. Those go in there. Snaps in. Rechargeable AA batteries work too. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug this in now. The wireless adapter works fine with USB splitters. I'm going to restart games. When you ever change controllers, you need to restart the game arcade. So let's try Beach Buggy Racing. Now this one you have to press the on button. This is on and off. Like I said before, this is the A button, this is the B button, this is the Y button, this is accelerate, and this is brake. This does directions. Using the game controller offers so much better control. It's much smoother. Reaction time is much better than using the steering wheel or the LCD controls. Overall, a very good controller. It feels solid and works well with all the games. Some people prefer the location of the left joystick on Xbox controllers, others prefer the location on PlayStation controllers. Benefits to this game controller include price and the ability to use it wirelessly. Last, we have the EasySMX EMS 9100 wired controller. It is basically identical to the previous wireless version, except it has a USB cable. All of the buttons and joysticks, the feel of the controller are identical. Of the 4 controllers, I have to not recommend the liklihood controller due to its not supporting Beach Buggy Racing 2. The Sony DualShock 4 version 2 is a solid controller, principally let down by a high price. The E9103 is a great controller for wireless use, and the E9100 works the same at a much cheaper price. If I were to recommend one controller, it would be the E9100. Good feel, good game support, and a great price. More games will be coming out that will use the game controller. Cuphead is supposed to be the next major release. Thanks for watching, see you in the next video.